Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off here talking about Nintendo Switch emulation on PC with Yuzu, and Yuzu got a handful of updates today. The first update is Mainline 1587. It fixes a crash that would occur when entering the replay menu in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And if you've updated Yuzu recently and Pikmin 4 wasn't working right, they fixed an issue with Pikmin 4 when it would hang after loading a save. Mainline 1589 updates the kernel codebase to match with the 17.0.0 firmware, and I would argue this one's pretty big. Enable CUDA NVDEC hardware decoder on Linux. It allows the GPU NVDEC decoding to work with NVidia Linux setups. So we can see here beforehand, the code in question disabled the use of CUDA NVDEC hardware decoder on all Linux machines, including those where it works just fine. And afterwards, they confirm that this allows the GPU decoding to work on their Linux NVIDIA setup. And lastly here, Mainline 1590, which is the latest version at the time of filming, they've improved the loading time of ROMFS mods. Moving on, and we're talking about something you may not have heard about. It's called Nyrna, and I might have butchered that name. It allows you to suspend games and applications, and it's for Windows and Linux. The whole premise behind this one is to give you the ability to suspend your game and resource usage at any time and resume whenever you want. Kind of like hitting the home button on the Switch and the PS button on the PlayStation. There are two main areas of benefit here. The first one is the obvious one, suspending games. You can pause cutscenes to read the subtitles. You can suspend in between checkpoints. The second area is huge. You can suspend applications. For example, if you're a content creator and you're rendering a video, sometimes it can take hours. It utilizes most of your CPU and a whole lot of your GPU in order to render things. If you have to do something while your computer is rendering, completely forget it. Except now, you can pause that and come back to it. Nyrna has been around for a while, since back in 2020, and the latest update here is August 29th with version 2.17.0. This one creates a new custom library to get process status on Windows systems. This should see a significant performance improvement over the previous method. If you are curious about this one, it's 100% free, it's open source, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Feel free to check it out. Next up here, we're talking about Analogue, and today Analogue teased their brand new Analogue 3D. They say, welcome to another dimension, 64 bits of pleasure. It's going to be a brand new system that plays N64 games via FPGA. They say here it's a re-imaging of the N64, 4K resolution, original display modes, and reference quality recreations of specific model CRTs and PVMs. The first and only aftermarket solution supporting 100% compatibility in every region, USA, Europe, and Japan. They also say, and no surprise here, it's going to support wireless controllers via Bluetooth and 2.4G. It's going to have 4 original style controller ports. It's completely engineered in FPGA, and it will feature Analogue OS. Now, this statement here I don't agree with at all. It's technically incorrect. They say no emulation. It is emulation. It's hardware emulation. It's 100% emulation. Now, you can split hairs on this one any way you want. You can call it simulation if you want. But if we take a look at the actual definition for emulator, and this is straight from Merriam-Webster, it says hardware or software that permits programs written for one computer to be run on another computer. And that's exactly what's going on here. Anyways, before I go down a rabbit hole there, they also show off a controller, and it's by 8BitDo. So here's a much better look at that controller once we've cranked the brightness. We can clearly see that 8BitDo logo. We can see a gated joystick. It reminds me a lot of a GameCube joystick as opposed to an N64. We've got our BA buttons, we've got our C buttons. And the overall shape is pretty much the same as their Ultimate controller. Unfortunately, we don't have full details of the price just yet, and the release date is in 2024. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Next up here, we're quickly talking about the Miyoo Mini 282, which was teased today by Miyoo on Twitter. I would argue that this really isn't that mini. I mean, it seems pretty thick and almost like a reverse ice cream sandwich. I'm also concerned about the shoulder buttons, the L and R buttons. Their placement here makes it seem like they'd be easy to accidentally hit. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. And speaking about handhelds, this one is pretty quick but pretty weird. It's about the AYN Loki. AYN stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or all you need depending on how you want to interpret that. And all they need is a payment of $11 from Bob Wulff for asking a question when he's going to get his AYN Loki 0. To make matters even more confusing here, Bob says the payment system is broken. It rejected 2 credit cards and 2 payment accounts. I've got no idea why they charged him $11 to ask where his device is. And speaking about wild, there's a very interesting horror game in development right now with a pretty cool concept. It's called Don't Scream. It's built in Unreal Engine 5 and you need a microphone to play. If you scream, you restart, and there is a catch though. Time only moves if you do, and you can't predict the scares. This game is heading to Steam and early access starts on October 27th. If you're curious about it, I'll drop a link in the description below. And speaking about interesting and indie games, next up we're talking about a brand new indie game for the Game Boy Color. It's called Frasier Fantasy. And this one is based on the Frasier TV show. If you are curious about this one, I'll drop a link to the itch.io page in the description below and feel free to check it out. You can play it right in your browser. The ROM here is less than 1 megabyte, and I believe the game is 100% free. And speaking about free, next up we're talking about MX Linux, and MX Linux just dropped 23.1 libretto, not to be confused with libretto. So MX 23.1 is based on Debian 12 Bookworm. It's available in XFCE, KDE, and Fluxbox, and features a 6.1 kernel. And speaking about kernels, moving on, we're quickly talking about Linux kernel 6.1, and Linux kernel 6.1 just became super long-term stable with 10 years of support. In my opinion, this is amazing. If you've got a system using a 6.1 kernel and you're happy with it, you don't need to upgrade it until August of 2033. And continuing to talk about Linux, last up here we're talking about NVidia again, and this one was spotted by Gaming on Linux. I'll drop a link to this site in the description below. Apparently here, NVIDIA is looking to hook up Reflex support in Proton. So at a high level here, NVIDIA Reflex is used to reduce latency in video games, which is great news if you've got an NVIDIA GPU and you're highly competitive. This might be something to keep your eye on. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like, hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos, don't tempt fate, save your state.